Today we count the 40 days of the Omer. Altogether, it's a 49 days, and when we reach the 50th day, is the festival of Shavuot, the festival of giving the Torah. And we're about to study the oral Torah, Tractate Círuvin, page 58, and we're holding the rope of the Torah. 50 days is the time of Shavuot, and here we're dealing with number 50, lo pachot velo yoter. The Mishnah said that the only measure on Shabbat limit only with a rope 50 cubits long, not less and not more. So Tana lo pachot, so it was taught in the Tosefta, no less, mipnei shemarbe, because the shorter rope improperly increases the Shabbat limit. So therefore, we fear that if you increase the Shabbat limit, the rope likely to be stretched, and therefore the limit of the 2,000 cubit, it will be not exact measure that should be velo yoter mipnei shemema'et, and not more, because again the longer rope reduce the limit, and therefore the sag of the weight change in that matter, because if you push too much, it's come down, and if you do the opposite, it's go other way. So it has to be the exact way. I'm going to show with you a picture which we will discuss a little later, but you see in the picture the point. You see in this picture, when you're measuring and you have the rope it's not stretching in the proper way, so the measurement is not the correct measurement. So therefore the idea is that it has to be the exact 50 cubit. Now we ask what type of rope you should use. So in other words, other condition in the rope. Look the merit of the rope, how much we discuss it. אומר רבי יאסי אין מודדים אלא בחבל של אפסקימיה. מהי אפסקימיה? What does that mean? אמר רבי ארבא נרגילה, מהי נרגילה? אמר רבי יעקב דיקלה דחד נברה. So here we speak about a palm tree, that this palm tree, it go around, it's like a little herb that go around the palm tree, and that's, they made this type of rope in those days. Ika de amre, it's another option. They said, Maya psikamia, what is the meaning? So they said, Rabbi Abba Mar Nargila, Rabbi Yaakov Mar Dikla Dechad Nivra. So he said that it's a palm tree with one fibrous vine. That's a certain species. According to the Aruch, it's some type of a gauze. But the point is that they use it for in those days as a rope. Tanya אמר רבי שופן חנן, אין לך דבר שיפה למדידה יותר משלשלות של ברזל. He said that is nothing better for measuring than iron chain. Why? Because that it's a very tiny iron, and the idea is you can use it for measurement because it's very exact, and the others is not. But why we cannot do it? He says because the Amar Torah, Shamar Torah uviyado chevel midah. They said in the book of Zechariah chapter 4, that behold a man with measuring rope in his hand. So we derive that measurement must be made with rope. So they said, Ve'aktiv, it's written when Ezekiel saw the angel, and that's famous idea of prognostication of the third temple. So he saw in chapter 40 in the book of Ezekiel, Uviyada ish kne hamida. He saw that the men speak about the godly entity, the angel, hand a measuring reed of 6 cubit long, of 1 cubit and a handbreadth each. So it means that it's used for measuring different ones. So you see that you measure with this palm tree. So he said, "Ahu letter A." It's using for the gate. So a small place like a entrance, it's good to use this type of stick. But if you need to make Shabbat, you need to use a rope, and basically that's followed the Radak, Rabbi David Kimchi, on Ezekiel chapter 4, sentence 3. So, since we said that using a hevel of Abskmimia, we see we bring now an opinion that disputed it. Tana Rav Yosef Shlosha Chavelimen. There are three types of rope: Shel Magag, Veshel Pishtan. One is a rope of Magag. It's like they call here a bulrush reed, and the other one a rope of Pishtan. It's called a netzer, and the other one it's called Shel Magag, Shel Netzer, Veshel Pishtan. I'm sorry, Shel Magag, Shel Netzer, and for Pishtan of the flax. So now we explain it. Shel Magag lepara. When you use for the red heifer, so you use a Magag. How do you know it? Because they said Kfatua bechevel hamagag untanu al gav marachata. They said in Tractate Para that what do? They bind the heifer with the rope of Magag and place it on the wood pile. So and there where you burn after you slaughter it. So you see that that's the type of they do, according to Rashi, a special way that they very circumspectly, very cautiously, they do the preparation for the red heifer in order to avoid any type of ritual impurity. So they use this type of rope that is not receive any ritual impurity. Then he said netzarim shel netzarim lasota. We said that if the fear of a woman that unfaithful, so the husband bring it to the Beit Hamikdash. So when the Kohen before that ritual take the third part of the garment, they put that robe. So will not be act of immodesty. The Tnan, they said in Tractate Sotah, page 7, so in other words, he bring this type of rope, Egyptian rope, and it's made of reeds, and in order to avoid the act of immodesty, and shel pshishtan lindida, and he also bring a rope of plaques used for measuring. So that's the measuring of the Shabbat limit. Now, Hayamoded Vigia, so it was measuring and he reached a canyon or a fence and he spent in the area that was completely flat. So they said, מניתן לחוזר מילתו מחלד אם אינו יכול להגיע להבליעו, הולך למקום שיכול להבליעו מבליעו, וצופה כנגד מילתו, וחוזר. So it means, if you reach a point that he cannot included the span because he go on the place and the whole start of the city is a 50 cubit, so he go to that valley that is much longer from the 50 cubits, even you don't see the face of the city, and he incorporate part of that as part of the rope from one narrow area to other narrow area, and therefore he watch in that spot against the city in order to know what exactly they align with the original measurement, and then when he resumes the measurement, he go from the first line that was across from the city. So Rashi here explained that he goes in the place exactly against the original measurement. From the Meiri, it means that he go from the original measurement and then he reduce the whole valley part that it's exceeded more than 50 cubit. תננו ליד תנו רבנן, היה מודד והגיע המידה לגיא. He was measuring for Shabbat limit and the measurement reached the canyon. So they said אם יכול להבליאו בחבל של 50 מבליאו, if he can span the canyon with a rope of 50 cubit, which means if the canyon is less than 50 cubit wide, he spans it. ואם לאו הולך למקום שיכול להבליאו, מבליאו. But if it's not, if the valley is more than 50 cubit wide, he goes to a place where it's narrow, so he can span it, and then he span it. וצופה, and he then looks for the spot at the same distance that aligns with his original measurement, וחוזר למידתו, and he resumes his measurement from there. אם היה גיא מעוקם, if the canyon was curved, so he said, מקדיר ועולה, he pierces and ascends. מקדיר ויורד, he pierces and ascends. So he go by the weed slowly, bead by bead, which means as long as he is standing before that one against the others, the other one hold it against his heart, and the other one hold it in his feet. So it's reached the measurement. Soon I'm going to show you a picture of that. הגיע לכותל, אין אומרים עיכוב הכותל, אלא עומדו והולך לו. If you reach the wall, you not say that you should not pierce the wall, so it's precisely measured, whether he estimates its width, and then he leaves and continue on. ואנא נתנן מבליאו, but we learn that he spends and then resume this measurement, וחוזר למידתו. So they said, it means that you need to use a real rope. So why we say that only by the way that he think, it's called umdenat da'at, that the way that you measure in your head. So said, hatam lichat hashmishta, hachalon lichat hashmishta. Over there, he spams his resume measurement that it was convenience, which means where the slope is relatively gentle, that the area can be crossed. So therefore, the area must actually be measured. The other one, it's not convenience. So one cannot walk to the wall. The estimate of its width is sufficient. So you see here is the picture. I think it's beautiful the way that Rashi put it. It's a picture number 216 in Morota Daf. He said, this is the kotel ראוי ללכת עליו, and you see, בדניך התשמיש נעלו חלוק קצת, הלך הקטן עם מבליאו. And it's not so hard. He can walk on this. So therefore he can incorporate part of that. Clear? Everyone see it? Okay. אמר רב יהודה אמר שמואל, לא שנו אלא שאין חוט המשקולת כנגדו. So he said, all of that apply, you know when that you don't have the only where the plumb line does not drop straight down, which means that where the canyon has a slope. So you see, Rashi said that you have less than 4 cubits. You see this situation, you see this one? Mm-hmm. So you hold it, and the distance between this one and that one, it's a 4 cubit, because if you look the way that it's moved down, it's changed the position.
Plumb line, right?
And then we soon will see it on the second part of the page, אבל חוט המשקולת יורד כנגדו מולידו מדידה יפה, which means מדידה יפה, it's this distance, and that way he can measure it, which means Rashi said at the bottom part it's not distance of the 4 cubit you have in the top. So 58b, so all of that we are lenient only in the place that the valley is exceeded more than 50 cubits, because then you cannot measure that area only by this way. But if it's less than 50 or exact 50, you can you do it by havla'a, which means that you take that part and incorporate it. וכמה עומקו של גיא, what is the depth of the canyon? אמר רב יוסף 2,000, up to the 2,000 cubit. הייתי והבעיה עמוק 100 ורוחב 50 מבליאו, ואם לאו אין מבליאו. אבל he said that if the canyon is up to 100 cubits deep and up to 50 cubits wide, one may span it. But if not, one may not span it. הוא דאמר כאחרים דתניא, אחרים אומרים אפילו עמוק 2,000 ורוחב 50 מבליאו. He says that even if the canyon is 2,000 cubits deep and 50 cubits wide, one may span it. איגד האמרי אמר רב יוסף אפילו יותר מ2,000. רב יוסף said even more than 2,000 cubits deep. So he spanned it. כמן, דלא כתנא קמא ולא כאחרים. There has to be not according to Nakama, which means that he allowed to incorporate only if it's less than 100 cubits, and not to others that allow up to 2,000 cubits, so, which means according to everyone, the valley you can incorporate if it's exceeded more than 2,000 cubits. So they said, Rav Yosef talked about the very different scenario. Hatam she'en chuta mishkolet yored kenegdo. Over there, where the Tanaim disagree about the depth of the canyon, that is span, it's talking about where the palm line does not drop straight down, and therefore there is a reason to measure the slope. But by us, hacha bechuta mishkolet yored kenegdo. Here we're talking the plumb line drops straight down, which means it's a straight line. So therefore, you cannot walk anymore. So Rav Yosef allowed to incorporate that as part of that, but even that it's go in a very straight way. So Tosfot explained in the Eiruvin, in the previous section, he says that in the valley it's not so hard to do it, but in the even that they have a very strong sleep. But by us it's different. Or how much? Rav Yomi said it's 4 cubits. That's what we show in the picture. What? Because otherwise it's almost impossible to stand there. Tosfot said that it's just they want to bring some framework of measurement, and that's the reason why they use 4 cubits in this sense. So he said, if you reach the hill, he does not measure his height, but rather he spans the hill, and if they're not there, and then resume his measurement. So he said, so that's apply only when we got to a hill that was inclined of 10 hand breadth and a run of 4 cubits. But we got to a gentler hill, which means one that has an incline of 10 hand breadth within 5 cubits. So he said, one must measure the hill properly, which must incline the slope itself in its measurement. He is lenient. Rava said that that's apply only to a hill that it's incline of 10 hand breadth within a 5 cubits. But with a hill that was inclined 10 hand breadth with 4 cubits, that's different. He says that he estimates the length of the hill, and then he leaves and continue measuring from the other side. So he basically said here that there is a 2 point in the when you talk about wall and the hill. Number one, if it's a little slip but not deep one, so if it's in between 10 hand breadth, so you measure it as a straight line, and you don't have this leniency. If it's a very, very slip, so you see that in the 4 cubits of this slip, it's exceeded more than 10 hand breadth, so you measure them in the air measurement, which means like you go from above. So otherwise you need to measure the width, and you don't need to have exact measurement, because it's very hard to climb over those hills. If it's so much that it's almost straight line, therefore you don't measure, just figure out it's like straight. In order to make sure that you don't incorporate that width, so the condition is that בלבד שלא יצא חוץ לתחום, that you don't go out of the measurement. מה איתם הרב כהנא גזירה שמא יאמרו מידת תחומים באה לכאן. The reason that you do that, it's because that it is a decree that people who say the measurement of the Shabbat limit comes to here. So not everyone is out of understanding. Some people maybe say that so they figure out that you're measuring a certain spot and they assume that the area included in the Shabbat limit. So they come to mistake. Then he said, if one, due to the width of the canyon or the hill, one cannot span it, so he may pierce it. So they said, excuse me, Tanu Rabbanan, Kitzad Mekadrin. So it's like the way we explain here, it's pierce it. So the rabbi said, Kitzad Mekadrin. So he said, Tachton keneged libo v'yom keneged margelotav. We said it earlier, but just repeat it, that they lower down to the heel, holding the rope at the level of his heart, while the one who's a higher hold it to the level of his feet. So in that sense, you hold the rope straight. אמר רבי נקטינה, אין מקדרים לה בחבל של 400. You use only the 4 cubits rope in order to pierce. אמר רב נחמן אמר רבא בר אבוה, נקטינן, אין מקדרים לו בגלה ורופה ולא ברי מקלט בני שאין של תורה. Because the measurement of the red heifer and the city of Levi, the rescue city, it's a Torah measurement, so we have to be very careful and very particular, very fastidious in order to make sure that you make the measurement properly. So it would come to a hills and valleys, we don't use measurement, you use the exact way that it has to be. So that's basically the practical halacha. Mishnah. En moledin lamina mumche. You have to use an expert to do the measurement. You don't use the measurement of Shabbat by someone who's not an expert surveyor, someone who knows what he's doing. Riba lemakom echad u'miet lemakom acher, which means you make it in one place. When you measure it, you measure to 4 different corners. So what happens, sometimes you measure it in a sense in almost diagonal, which is 2800 cubits, and then you go the other side is 2000 in each way. So he said if it average shomim lemakom sheriba, you have to go one accept the measurement, the place that he has extended the limit and strengthened the limit accordingly. So he said riba leechad u'miet leechad shomim lamerubeh. So basically, if one extended limit and one reduce it for others, you accept the extended measurement. Even a servant or a maid, that basically they are not valid to give a testament by the Torah. We trust them when they said this is the measurement of the Shabbat limits. So, for example, the Meiri said if they said that we saw the surveyor that did it, so or they said that everybody in the city used to go to that location, so we can count on their word because we assume that they use an expert. The Biur Halacha in Shit Tzadik Tet said that that's the way in that area we trust them, and the reason is that the sages did not state the matter to be stringent, but rather to be lenient. So the idea of more than 2,000 cubits is rabbinic in origin, and therefore we use more leniency than stringencies. 59, just to the Mishnah, few lines. So far we said that if someone makes the measurement, we go by the largest measurement, and you're allowed to go there. So they said, he specifically said that the place that he extended, it's okay, limits is okay, but otherwise not. Says, which means even in the place that he extended the measurement, you depend, you can go and you take the small measurement and you match it to the large one. That's what Rashi explained in the Mishnah. So you go by the extended one. Why? It's the same as we said earlier. If you have 2 experts that measure that survey, the measure of the Shabbat limit, one is longer than the other. It happens in many fields that you have more than one person. So you go by the one who extended more.
Right.
אמר אביי, ובלבד שלירבה הוא מתד העיר באחסונה. That's as long as he doesn't exceed it. For example, if he made a mistake and he measured 2,000 in the diagonal and instead of 2,800. So he said in that sense, if it's the measured Shabbat limit of the city calculated as a diagonal line from the corner of the city, and is calculated as a straight line from the side of the city, then we have an issue. But otherwise, it's negligent, and therefore you cannot go by the one who make it longer. The Mishnah Berurah in Shin Tzadik Tet elaborate on that. Shalom Ruchamim LaDavar LaAchmir Lo LaAkel. The sages made the rabbinic idea of Tchum Shabbat, the limit of Shabbat. They go by leniency. והתנא לא אמרו חכמים את הדבר להקל או להחמיר, and the other Bible said the opposite. אמר רבינה, לא להקל על דברי תורה, אלא להחמיר על דברי תורה, because according to the Torah, there's no issue to get out of the 2,000 amount of the limit. It's rabbinic that made it. תחום דרבנן, since the Shabbat limit are rabbinic law, the sages permitted certain leniencies with regard to how the Shabbat limits are measured. So remember, according to that, by the Torah it's not an issue, it's a rabbinic, and therefore the Ritva explained that even that it's a doubt in the Isu Darabanan that you're not sure, you don't go lenient if you can check it. But here we are lenient. Why? Because if you think about it, he put a tremendous effort of measurement, the Ritva said. So therefore it's like a doubt that you cannot clarify it. And therefore, you are more lenient when it's come to rabbinic prohibitions. Shulchan Aruch Or HaChaim 399. In the case of one who is measuring the distance to determine the Shabbat limit and reaches a canyon up to 2,000 cubits deep, whose walls slope over a distance of more than 4 cubits, if the canyon is less than 50 cubits wide, he spans it. If not, he pierces it. If the canyon is more than 2,000 cubits deep, one measures the area of the entire slope itself in accordance with the opinion of the Rosh. If the area over which walls of the canyon slope is less than 4 cubits and the valley is narrower than 50 cubits, he spans it. If that is not possible, he measures only the width of the floor of the canyon, and that's the view of the Rosh, according to the Gemara's second version of the Mishnah. Also, we discuss a measurement. Only an expert surveyor may measure and establish Shabbat limit, and all adults are believed with regard to the Shabbat limit, including maid servants and servants. Minors are not believed. However, an adult is believed when they says, I remember that we used to walk up until this point when I was young. And this ruling is in according with the Mishnah, here in the Mishnah, in the tractate Ketubot. And the last halacha, it's the idea that if two surveyors measure the Shabbat limit separately, the conclusions of the one who extends the measure are accepted. So it's this is the halacha as long as the difference between the two set of measurement does not exceed 585 cubits. The approximate difference between the Shabbat limit and the measure directly from the side of the city and the Shabbat limit is determined on the basis of diagonal lines of 2,000 cubits from the four corners of the city.
Shulayim karetu